Good morning, everybody. Can just give me a quick thumbs up, those of you that I can see if you can hear me okay. Okay, thanks, Caroline, Alan, Joe, Sonia, Michelle. Oh, morning, Michelle, Katie, okay. And then everyone else has switched their video off. Tusha, oh, there's Tersha, all right. I thought everyone's got very shy this morning. Good morning, Deepa. Guys, if you can put your video on, it's much more fun for me to look at. Otherwise, I'm just looking, there we go, a few more of you coming to life. Good morning, welcome. It is 10 o'clock. You've got me and my colleague Ben with you for the next 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how we're getting on. A few people saying hello in the chat function, so please feel free to use that, either directly to myself, to Ben Edwards, my co-host, or you can always contact each other as well if you want to talk about us behind our back. We have no issues with that, of course. So welcome. I hope everyone's enjoying their home life. And if you've got kids at home downstairs, or as I have right now, standing right next to me, who should be homeschooling, then I hope you're keeping on top of them. Oh. Can see everything that goes on behind the scenes now. Awesome. Okay, welcome. So look, I'm going to launch into this. Before we do, please bear in mind, I'm kind of setting this up as a bit of a 101. So if you've got any experience with coaching, if you've been through any coaching workshops, or I know some of you have gone through some formal training with ICF or something, please don't think that I might potentially even adding any more strings to your bow, but you might get something out of it. That's really the point. Today is really an opportunity for us to showcase what we can do for you. And also, you know, if you do walk away from here, taking one or two things away from it, then that would make me a very happy chappy as well. So without further ado, I'm going to launch into this. A couple of you, or at least one person, asked for the link for our poll everywhere, which I'm going to ask you to use and log into. You can either do it on your phone or your desktop. And what that allows us to do is to build into an interactivity into our session. So I'm going to put out a couple of questions to you. If you're struggling or you lose it, whatever, every time there's a question that comes up, this will be on the top of it as well. So you've got no issues to deal with there, hopefully. If you have, once again, flag it either on the chat to everybody or directly to Ben Edwards, and we'll take care of that for you internally. So very briefly, as I begin, I need to just slide something out of the way of my screen. And I'm going to pop in here. Okay, so a couple of things. What I'm going to ask you to do is usually when we do small teams, I always say keep your microphones on, because when you do have kids disturb you or a dog bark, it just kind of adds a little bit of human element and gives everyone in the room something to kind of laugh and bond over. So if you're doing this for your teams and they're relatively small, keep them on. The size of the group we've got today, I'll ask you to keep muted. Okay. However, we will be putting you into some breakout rooms where you go into some chats with some smaller groups. Please, please, please unmute your microphone. You can do that by simply clicking on the microphone icon that's on your screen where your lovely little face is. Or the other thing you can do is hold the space bar and it unmutes you temporarily. And when you let go of the space bar, you're then muted again. Please use the chat function to ask questions. Ben will draw up a list of questions that we'll have at the end. And then once again, it says, sorry, that was my next bullet point. And please engage in the polls as and when they appear, because it really does help us bring some life into this. And also, once again, I always ask, just pop your video on. We're not looking for anyone picking their nose or anything like that. It's just so we can all engage a little bit more interactively as human beings, all stuck in our houses right now. What I thought I'd do is really just set it up so we've got a common benchmark of understanding, really. And really what I'm looking to do is kind of establish the fact that coaching is not a one-off thing. As a lot of times people say, oh, this person needs a coaching session. There's no really such thing as a coaching session. Coaching is a process, ideally a planned process to improve skills, knowledge, or ability in a certain area. Now, what we're talking about today is coaching team members within your business. We're not talking about life coaching, career coaching. That might be a part of it. But what we're really talking about is how do you coach your people to become functional experts in specific skill sets and knowledge areas. So this guy, Tim Galloway, he's written a number of books on coaching. He's actually a tennis coach by trade. And his definition is one that I really quite like, which is coaching is an unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance, helping them to learn rather than teaching them. And that's a really critical piece of it, because as a coach, you don't have to be an expert in that person's job. Your job is to be an expert in asking great questions and also to be an expert in shutting up and listening properly. And that's going to allow you to probe with better questions. And really what we want to do with coaching is help those people find their own way to the right answers or the ways of working. Sometimes, obviously, if you're working with people who are new to a task or a function or a business, you might need to step in and be a bit more directive with your coaching. But essentially what we're looking to do is help them to find those answers for themselves. You're really looking to create self-reliant people. And once again, it's a great analogy to being a parent. You know, if you've got kids and you just tell them what to do all the time, they just, okay, push back and they'll go and do it, but often begrudgingly. If you engage them in the conversation and you allow them to find their own answers and way forward, you'll actually find you start raising much more resourceful, resilient people. And it's the same thing with your teams at work. So it very much is a process, a planned process to help people unlock their potential through their own learning. So very briefly, why do we coach in a business environment? Well, over 40%, and it might even be higher than that now, of Fortune 500 use business coaching. So coaches that go into their business and work initially with their staff. It is about learning. It is not about teaching. So once again, it's not about a subject matter expert giving information. It is about how do you help and create an environment for that person to learn, and more importantly, to make mistakes. Now, what a coach does, as it says there, is observe patterns and set the stage for new actions. What we're looking to do is to create a sense of what's happening at the moment, what's working well, what's not, and those things that aren't working well, how do we tweak them? And those things that are working well, how do we improve them and get them moving faster? And the reason I put this in a couple of times, because it is not a one-off piece, it is a process. Minimum, you know, when I'm coaching, particularly, let's say, salespeople, I want to be working with them for at least 6 to 8 sessions, because then you can start seeing a shift in behavior. 61% of clients who have gone through coaching report having greater job satisfaction. Those of you that know anything about Herzberg's theory of motivation, and I love telling people this in training sessions, that money is not a motivator. It is just what's referred to as a hygiene factor. The things that motivate people is getting feedback, coaching, development, opportunities to grow. So a few things there for us to think about. Okay. Hello. Okay. So really what I'm going to talk about really is a really high level coaching process. Now, the first thing we're going to do with our people is identify need. And we do this really by on-the-job observation. We can do it by measuring results. If you sit next to someone that you work with, you can see how they interact, maybe the way they speak to a customer, the way they respond to feedback, the way they interact with other people around them. Whatever that skill set might be, you want to observe that. And what you want to be looking for is some unemotional, observable facts, okay? Now, facts can be something that you see someone do, but you have to remove the emotion from it, which we'll come to a little bit later. Once we identify the need, then what we're going to do is coach. Now, there's 2 ways that you can do this. You can do what we refer to as day-to-day feedback, which is much more informal. That's those little touching points that you're going to have. Now, because you're working virtually, you don't have as many opportunities, as I said on my last webinar, about your bumping. You won't bump into people around the water cooler or the pantry. So you, once again, might have to plan those a little bit more methodically. But for me, it actually makes you a better coach, because what it allows you to do is take a step back from the noise of what's going on in your office and the work you've got in your 500 emails, and actually think about an individual and say, okay, what can I do to plan this person's development? The other way, of course, we do that is a formal discussion. Ideally, you have some kind of planner for that, and you do that on a regular basis, maybe once a week, once every fortnight. After we've done that, what we're then looking to do is, as the leader, provide support. That doesn't mean you have to provide the support. Maybe it does, but it could be other people in your team, could be someone from another function, could be a customer, okay? But what is it that that person needs? Now, what we're looking to do at this stage is encourage not just responsibility, but accountability. Accountability for anything that that person decides is a good action has to sit with them, okay? Our job as the coach is to see what resources we can provide. And as it says there, remove any barriers. So if people think they're going to get stuck on something, what can we do to do that? We don't want to be doing the work for them, otherwise they'll never grow, which is going to make it easier for them. And that essentially completes the cycle. I mean, officially, there should be another arrow there, right? So which goes off to like done. So as you've upskilled someone in a certain area, that'd be, okay, great. No need to identify that anymore because we've done it. But usually there's an ongoing performance process that's involved in that. Okay, so what I thought I'd do is launch into this feedback, and I'm wondering if this one will work as well. I'm looking on my phone and no, it's not working again. So I'm just gonna skip through this. So look, one thing, if you're a leader or if you work with people or you have the opportunity to coach others in a business environment, feedback is the number one thing that I think it will set you apart. It is extremely motivational. Some people don't like giving it because it feels awkward telling another human being that you need to do something better. And then there's always the question of, oh, I'm going to get judged because it's my opinion. So what I'm going to do is kind of give you some golden rules as to how this works, or the best ways that we work. So here's a couple of things that I always recommend you do when you are giving feedback. First of all, be specific. So when I mean be specific, I'm talking about you'll want to give actual actions that person take or behaviors that you saw them. Don't just come out of that and say, hey, that was really good. And I've seen that a lot. Hey, you did really well in that meeting. Great. That person might go, okay, good. But that gives them nothing to work on. Or if you come out of that meeting, that person says, hey, you could have run that better. Just shrug your shoulders. Okay, that's great. Thank you for the feedback. Specifically, what could I have done? So we need to be giving specifics, and we'll jump into that a little bit in a moment. Be honest. Now, this might seem a bit obvious, but what we're really looking to do here is tell people what they need to do to improve, and also what they're doing that's working well for them. Sometimes human beings, we're social animals, and a lot of us have a problem having a difficult conversation with people because it means that we've got to tell them something that we don't think we'd like to hear ourselves. Now, deep in your psychology, in your 1,000-generation-old conscious or subconscious, is what it's telling you is this person's not going to like me, so that creates an emotion of awkwardness and a feeling in me that I don't like. But we need to be honest with them, because essentially we're trying to help them improve, right? People say feedback is a gift. So when we talk about specific and honesty, what we're going to be talking about is either the impact and the action on the behavior or the result. So there's two things that we look at there: impact and behavior, and action and result. And I'm going to break those down for you a little bit in a moment. So if you're giving feedback to someone and you just say, okay, oh, you were really, you came across very miserable in there. Okay, that is not going to help them, because you're not actually giving them anything to work on. What you're doing is telling them how they landed with you, what impact they had on you. What we need to do is actually get back to the actual behavior that they were on. Timing is absolutely critical. So essentially, if you know someone needs to get feedback, that feedback needs to get given to them as soon as possible. If you are sitting there in a appraisal at the end of the year and you're worried because you now got to give feedback to someone that happened in something that happened in May, you're doing it absolutely the wrong way. Appraisals aside, there should be no surprises in an appraisal. So your feedback, ideally, as soon as it happens, within 48 hours in an ideal world, phone call, Zoom, whatever it might be. And if you're giving developmental feedback, I always recommend you do that either face-to-face or on a Zoom call when you're working virtually. Once again, when you're co-located with people, face-to-face is much more important, because you get to read them a little bit and they get to have their say as well. So once again, evidence. What evidence have you got? It might be an observation, might be a fact, might be a bit of feedback from a customer or another manager, but you must be able to back up your feedback with evidence. Otherwise, people go, right, that's just your opinion. So if you can then say, absolutely, it's my opinion, but it's based on ABC, what we're trying to do is create some rational evidence behind the feedback we give. So what we then work on is facts, and we keep our emotions out of it. It's not about how you feel about that person. If someone gives me feedback and they say, I feel you could have done that better. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Can you specifically tell me what I did, how that landed with you, and what could I be doing differently? Okay, so it's facts, not emotions, we want to be talking about. And then finally, this is really important, and I see this happen quite a lot, that people give feedback and almost walk away from it. You've got to allow the person you're giving feedback an opportunity to express how that feels. An expression I always like to use is, how does that land with you? So, you know, one of the most awkward things in the world that you can give feedback on is that someone smells. I've had to do that twice in my career. It is the most hideous thing to do. But what I've also found is, as soon as you say it, it's the easiest conversation to have. So once again, I need to tell you something. You have an odor. Okay, those are the words that come out of your mouth, and as soon as you say it, the rest of it is downhill. But essentially what you do is you give some evidence or reasons behind that, and then say to that person, how does that land with you? Or what do you think about that? What was your perspective on that? But you have to give them an opportunity to voice their opinion. Otherwise, they will just walk away from that and not feel that they've been listened to or heard. And that's where people start to feel that they're kind of not victimized or bullied to a certain extent, but that they don't get given a fair crack of the whip. Okay. next. Once again, you can't do this. I'm not too sure why we've got these issues today, but we'll just skip.
Let me just double check on this. So is confidence a behavior or impact? So let me just quickly check one thing, Russell. I've got a funny idea that I can work this out. So,
funny as in haha. Oh,
yeah, very much. So everyone should be able to see that now.
Yes, I've got it.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay. So now people can participate.
Hey, okay. Good. Oh, 50-50. 50-50. I'll just give that maybe another 10 seconds and we'll see how this plays out. Okay.
And hopefully the next one should go automatically live, Russell, but if not, as you show the poll, I'll make sure it's activated in the background.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Okay. All right. Behavior, impact. Okay. So behavior's taken a little bit of a lead out into the front. Okay, perfect. Now this is a great example of where we have obviously a difference of opinion in things like this. So look, when we talk about giving feedback, some of those golden rules I said is you give feedback on behavior and impact, or action and results. Okay, those are the two things that we want to work on, and they're kind of separate. So behavior 77% and impact at 23%. So thanks for sorting that out, Ben. That's really cool. Okay, so what I'll tell you is that obviously one of you is correct. The answer is that confidence is an impact. And those 77 of you now throwing stuff at your screens and spitting your cereal over your keyboard. Let me explain why. And a great example is if someone's giving a presentation and you come out of that presentation, you say to them, hey, you look really confident in there, okay? What you're telling them is how they landed with you. So if I tell you, hey, let's use Michelle as an example. Michelle, you're really confident in that. She might say, great, thank you very much for that. But it doesn't give her anything that she's able to repeat. The behavior that she actually needs to hear in terms of her feedback is, you looked really confident in there because you made eye contact, you stood tall with your shoulders back, and you spoke clearly. They are 3 behaviors, not impacts. Those 3 behaviors then create an impression or an impact on the audience. So when we're talking about confidence, it's really important, sorry, not just confidence, when we're talking about giving feedback, that we make sure we get to the behavior. And as you can see, a large proportion of us, and by the way, this is not uncommon. When we run this face-to-face in training sessions, I would have to say that the results are roughly similar, okay? Most people think that confidence is a behavior. It is not. Confidence is a perception that you have of someone, and that perception is created by the behavior that they display, okay? So if someone's looking you in the eye when they're talking to you, it has a very different impact on you to when someone can't maintain eye contact with you and they have to keep looking away. At the back of your mind, you've got this, okay, is there a confidence issue here with that person, okay? Shoulders slumped, face down, shoulders back, head up. 2 very, very different impacts. So I don't want to over key the point. It's really important that we understand that when we give feedback to people, you have to give them feedback on the things that they can control. And the way they control their perception in areas like confidence or anger or happy is through the behaviors that they actually put forward, okay? So thank you very much for that. Cool. So this is what we do in terms of using a feedback model. There's lots of feedback models out there, and I know we've got some training people and HR people in the room at least, so I'm sure you would have come across them. SBI is a very common one, which is situation, behavior, and impact, and there's the word again. What I like to do when we do a 101 is to use the STAR model. The reason I like to use it is because you can use it in lots of different things. It's exactly the same model for, competency-based interviewing, looking for questions, looking for answers in there. So STAR model, literally it stands for the situation or task the person was involved in. So it could be a question of saying, Daniel, when you were photocopying those papers, it literally has to be as specific as that in terms of the feedback you're given. The next thing you then want to provide is the action that Daniel took. So while you're photocopying the papers, I noticed you stacked them up in a certain way. I'm really going off piece with my bad example here. And then the last thing is the result, which meant everybody had their documents organized and on their desks in a timely fashion. Thank you for that, okay? So when we're giving positive or what we call their motivational feedback, it's very easy just to turn around and say, Daniel, that's a great job. And Daniel go, great, and maybe he will feel a little bit better. But if we can break it down into those 3 areas, it gives him something that he can cling to, something that he can use moving forward. Daniel, during that time when you had to photocopy those papers with a short deadline, I love the fact the way you organized it on the desk beforehand and had all the papers stacked out. I mean, everyone got their documents on time for the meeting. Great, keep that up. Now, as you get more and more used to using this model, and I always get people to use this quite structurally at the beginning, it's something that will just roll off your tongue. It's something that will become part of your conversation toolkit very, very quickly, okay? So giving motivational positive feedback is one thing, which is obviously a big part of coaching. What about when we have to give developmental feedback, okay? So this feedback, like I said, in part of our coaching process is those day-to-day bump-ins or those pieces where you just have to pull someone for a quick 2-minute conversation, okay? We use the same model. That's why I like this one. So it's situational task, the action that person, and the result that happened. Now, obviously, if we're giving developmental feedback, the result is not one that we wanted. So it'd be a question of, Daniel, when you were photocopying the papers, I noticed that you were very disorganized with the way the papers laid out, meaning, as in the result, no one got their documents on time, okay? So what we now need to do with Daniel is to help him out with this. So what we do is we do one of two things. We either offer him or we ask him, depending on where he is on his development journey, we can say to him, next time, and we give him an alternate action. What I suggest is you lay them out in alphabetical order, whatever it might be. Or if he's a little bit further along and you think he can come up with his own ideas, you can just say, great, look, what could you do differently next time? So you're now flipping from a tell to an ask conversation. And this is where, when we get into coaching, it's a really important piece. It's really about understanding that most of your conversations will be asking questions. Very early on with new tasks or new people, you might be telling, but we want to get away from that because that's not coaching, it's just directing. And as you can see from the model, if we're offering an alternate action, what are we then offering? The alternate result. If you were to lay those out in alphabetical order, you'll find you'll be able to find your papers quicker, meaning you'll get the papers out on time. Or we could be saying, okay, Daniel, what could you have done differently? And he might say, okay, I could have laid them out in alphabetical order. That's a great idea. If you'd have done that, what would have been different? And I know it seems like you're almost like flogging a dead horse because it's like, okay, it's obvious. But actually what you've got to understand is not always obvious, because if it was obvious, they would have done it in the first place. So what we're doing is we're just using a guiding process to help people find their own way. So situation, task, action, result, okay? Situation, task, action, result, alternate result. That's what we want to be offering people. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just break into a little bit of a kind of a storytelling mode here. And I'm going to introduce you to this story, which is the Great Flood of the Crystal Valley. Okay, so I'm just going to turn my screen off one moment. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to tell you a quick story, and I'd just like you to sit there and listen. When you've done this, I'm then going to send you out into some breakout rooms of around about 6 people per room. My colleague Ben will shuffle them around a little bit. And what I want you to do is, and it'll be on your poll, Ev, by the way, I'd like you to rate the characters, okay? I'm just going to ask you 2 questions. Who do you like the most? And you just choose one of the characters. And who do you like the least? And you just choose one of the characters, okay? That's the concept. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read you the story. It is the Great Flood of the Crystal Valley. Are we sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. In Crystal Valley, there lived a young couple named Tom and Nicole, who were very much in love and engaged to be married. Crystal Valley was bisected by the Crystal River, and every day Nicole would cross the bridge in the marketplace on the other side of the village. But one day, after months of torrential rain, the great dam burst and sent a flood down the Crystal River, crashing the bridge away and leaving Nicole stranded on one side and Tom on the other. With the river too wide to cross and all the boats washed away, Nicole yearned to return to Tom once again on the other side. Now, after many weeks and with no sign of the floodwaters retreating, Nicole found Bill the boatman, making a boat out of a tree that had fallen in the forest, and she asked him about the boat. He told her that it would be completed the next day. Nicole asked Bill if he'd be willing to take her in the boat the next morning. Back to Tom, to which Bill replied, "Of course, I'd be glad to take you, but only if you spend the night with me tonight." Confused and in need of advice, Nicole decided to seek the advice of her friend Susan. She told Susan about Bill's proposal and asked, "What should I do?" Susan responded, "You're an adult, Nicole. You should be able to make this decision yourself." So Nicole spent the night with Bill the boatman, and true to his word, he rowed Nicole back to the waiting arms of Tom the next day. And as Tom and Nicole sat beneath their favorite tree, Nicole began to cry. And when Tom asked what was troubling her, Nicole replied, "Oh, Tom, I've got a confession to make. In order to be with you today, I had to agree to spend the night with Bill the boatman. Otherwise, you'd not rowed me back. So feeling terribly deceived, Tom told Nicole that he was now disappointed in her and wanted her to be by himself. And he stormed off into the forest saying he never wanted to see her again. Nicole, heartbroken, wandered aimlessly towards the river. Okay. That is the end of the story. What I'm going to ask you to do, you're going to be popped out into 5 breakout rooms of maybe 6 or 7 people. And on your poll, Ev, you will get a question come up. Oh, sorry, the question will come up when you come back is, which character do you like the most? And just choose one, but I want the group to agree. That's why you're in your breakout rooms. So which character do you like the most? And which character do you like the least? Okay. Now I'm going to give you 5 minutes to have these conversations. Okay. And that's all I want you to come back with is who do you like the most? Who do you like the least? And then when you come back into it, we'll do the poll, Ev, and you can pop in your answers to that survey there. Okay. So Ben, when you're ready, please just do that. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. I'm just going to go into the survey here and have a quick look. So look at, where's the, so who did we like the most? So we've got here a lot of people liking Nicole, some people liking Tom, some people liking Bill the boatman, some people liking Susan. Okay, all right, cool. Someone that's chosen Nicole, whether that's an individual or a group, would you mind just opening your microphone and tell us about why have you chosen Nicole? Why did you like her the most in the story, please? I don't mind who it is, just open up and start talking.
Hi.
Hey, Summer, how are you?
Yeah, so it's a kind of tricky situation because no one is completely right, but at least Nicole was held accountable, did it for a reason, for an objective, and being honest as well. So this is why we chose.
Got 13% of the vote. You chose Nicole, perfect. Can someone who chose Bill the boatman tell us why you liked him the most, please? If
Hi.
someone,
Yeah,
perfect, thanks. Go for it.
Great. So I picked Bill the Boatman not because he's a villain and he got but because he got what he wants. This is something I really appreciated because he had a discussion and negotiation, and he offered his part and he won. He had what he wanted at the end.
Okay. All right. Good. So as far as you're concerned, then it's just a question of he asked a question, he got an answer. Right, and that was it. He got something out of it. Perfect. All right, good. Ben, let's have a look at the next question. Let's see who people like the least, please. All right, Tom. Bill the boatman. God, he's got 46% of the vote. Okay. No one doesn't like Nicole. Okay, interesting enough to see. Few people don't like Susan, or quite a few people don't like Susan. Okay, so who chose Susan? Would someone mind opening up and tell us why did you not like Susan out of all the characters? Why did you like her the least? Joe, is that you?
Yeah. I got Susan as well because she did not provide the right questions to Nicole. If she could have asked her, would your husband accept what you could do to get to him? If she did the right coaching process, she could have reverted the situation.
Okay, so you'd like to have seen more interaction from Susan. All right, good. And someone that didn't like Bill the boatman, why on earth, based on Joe's rationale, why on earth don't you like Bill the boatman? Who can open up and tell us?
I think she, yeah, please.
Yeah, fire away.
I thought he took advantage of the situation and the Nicole's basically desire to get to Tom on the other side.
All right, so you felt he manipulated the situation to his own end. Okay, I think we'll put you and Joe in a room and you can just hash out the issues around Bill the boatman there. So look, it's interesting because one thing it does show is perceptions of different behaviors. And some people, a lot of people don't like Bill the boatman because of that reason. A lot of people end up liking him for the reason that Joe cited was, he didn't do anything wrong. He asked the question. We don't know if Nicola said no, if he said, all right, I'll take you in it. We don't know that. But we can only judge people by what we do. Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Ben. If you can give me the screen back, please. And Ben, that document I sent you, could you then ping that out to everyone on the chat, please?
Yes.
Okay, so what Ben is now going to send you is actually the real reason behind that story. I don't care who you like and who you don't like, or what your moral code is or your moral compass. What I'm going to ask you to do now is Ben is sending out a document on the chat, and that document is a structure of the STAR model that we just went through. What I'm going to ask you all to do now is take a minute to think about the people you were just in the room with, and I'd like you to write one piece of positive feedback for someone that was in your small conversation. And I'd like you to write one piece of developmental feedback for someone who was in your conversation. So did they engage? Did they interact? Did they not engage? Did you find them rude? Whatever it was, but I'd like you to use the structure of that document. Situational task, that's easy. When discussing the Great Flood of Crystal Valley, next, what was the action that person took and what was the result, okay? So maybe a tone of voice they used, something they did, but what I'm looking for is one piece of positive feedback and one piece of developmental feedback that you'd like to give someone in the room. Now, I know one of the groups I went to, there was only 2 people in there. So you get to, you can't necessarily choose. So this is really an opportunity for you now to practice writing a bit of feedback. And guess what? You're going to go back into your breakout rooms and you're going to take a couple of minutes to give that feedback to those people. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to take a moment. If anyone's having a problem getting the document that Ben's put, just click on the chat function at the bottom of your bar, or maybe it's the top if you've moved it. And there's a document there called STAR Feedback in Practice, okay? And what you will be able to do then is simply open it up and use it. I mean, you can print it out, you can write it, whatever, it's a PDF, but even if you just sketch out the feedback on your, on a pen and pad next to you. Now, if you look at this, I'll just pop back into my Zoom quickly. Why is that not showing? Okay.
Just while you're checking that, Russell, we have had a question to say, do you need to give the feedback to the same person, motivational and developmental?
Great question. I'm sorry. No, it can be to different people. Absolutely. So this is roughly the form that you should be seeing. So motivational feedback, and it's just giving you those boxes. Okay. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to give you a minute, and then Ben's going to ping you back into those rooms, and I'm going to ask you to share your feedback. Okay. Be straight to the point. Be honest. Give evidence feedback. Talk about behavior, not impacts, and then we'll bring you back in and just see how that felt. Okay. I'm going to give you a minute now, and I'll speak to you shortly. Okay. Welcome back. Welcome back. So Rosa, I just saw you there with a big kind of smile on your face. How did you find that? How did you, was that good, easy, awkward?
No, it was, yeah, it was easy. Our group was very, we had different opinions at the beginning, but everybody listened to each other and why, at the end, we decided that anyway, we could choose whatever character we wanted, and we didn't have to all agree on it. So,
sure. And what about the good feedback?
we gave motivational feedback because everyone was very very open and
of course they were. Everyone was so nice. All right. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks for that. Laura, I know you're one for not, keeping your opinions to yourself. So tell us, how did you find giving the feedback? I'm not too sure because if you're muted or not.
I'm unmuted. You should be able
perfect.
to hear me.
I can hear you now. Yeah. So how did you find the feedback piece?
It was quite good, actually. We were gentle with each other, I think. It's interesting. It's easy to give the positive very easily. When it comes to the constructive or the feed forward, you had to, you took the time to pause and consider what you have to say to the other person, because we're such a nice group that you didn't want to hurt their feelings.
Of course. Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. So look, great, thanks for that. A couple of things I noticed, I popped into maybe 3 or 4 of the groups. As you said, Laura, people giving the motivational feedback is easy, right? Because we all want to hear good stuff. A couple of things that I would just offer feedback on myself from what I heard, particularly when we're giving developmental feedback. The first thing I heard is almost everyone doing something we call rescuing. And what that means is when you say a statement, but then you say something like, but I do that too. And what you're doing is you're negating the feedback from that person, okay? So you're giving them a reason and they go, okay, well, you do it, everyone does it, I don't have to change. So it's almost like they switch off in that little bit. So rescuing is the one thing. The other thing as well is the use of what we call group language. When you're giving feedback or even coaching someone, it's about them. So you want to be using the word you, not we. So otherwise you'll leave that session with a to-do list as long as that person, okay? Now I appreciate we live in the Middle East. This is what we refer to as a collective culture. We use group language naturally. It's we and us, okay? And it's a little bit more awkward to do that, but it's about driving accountability. So you go walk away from a feedback or a coaching session, you say, okay, so can we do that? And that person says, yeah, we can do that. You come back 2 weeks later, did you do it? Well, no, you said we were going to do it. So the use of group language is really important as well, okay? So yeah, so the rescuing is something that I always see, and here's the other thing as well. I hear almost everyone, first of all, when they first give feedback, do this. This is the rescuing statement you have to get rid of from your vocabulary. Other than that, it was great. Okay, so you give your feedback and it might be very valid, and then you just throw it all out of the window, pour petrol on it and set it on fire by saying, other than that, you did a great job. Because what do you think that person's going to walk away from your conversation remembering? Oh, I did a great job. So what we need to do is make sure that we deliver the feedback, that we can hold that poker face, Laura. Like you said, it's awkward sometimes. Just say, this is where I think you can get better. Okay, so I've got to tell you this. Walk away from it, even if you want to bury your head in your hands when you get around the corner, because I know when you first start doing this, it does feel very awkward because, like I said, we're social animals. But that's a really nice little exercise to jump into. If we had a bit more time, we could get into that a little bit more. So look, thank you very much for doing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leap back into sharing my screen because we're at our hour now. We had a few minutes at the beginning that I lost, so I apologize. If you have somewhere to go, I know I might lose you. Otherwise, I will just finish up because I'm going to introduce you very quickly, and this might lead into our next session if you're interested. I'm going to introduce you to, or maybe reintroduce you to a coaching process. But before we do that, because we are working virtually and remotely, there are a few challenges that we need to be aware of. That the first one, you've seen it today, right? We've run a number of these, and I do promise, we've practiced this, but already you've seen where we've been trying to use the polls and the breakout rooms. It hasn't always gone to plan. So first thing you need to do is make sure that you're comfortable with the technology. If you use something like Zoom, or your company may say, right, we use WebEx now, or we use GoToMeeting. If you've never used that before, make sure that you are familiar with it. Call your friend, your husband, whoever it might be, your wife, your sister. Have a little practice just with using the technology first of all, because it will really, it will take away any distraction from your coaching sessions. Logistics is obviously an interesting one because people are working from home. You can't pull them into a meeting room. So it is about saying, look, I'd like to book in this coaching session with you. These are the objectives. And what I'm going to ask you to do is find a quiet place, and we'll need, 45 minutes, an hour, or whatever it might be. So timing is important. After about 45 minutes, when you're coaching online, people start to get a little bit of fatigue. Structure. I'm going to give you a structure in a moment because it's really important you have a framework to hang your calls on. The other thing as well is the experience, and this is essentially what you're doing now. And at the end of all of your coaching sessions where you think you've done a good, bad, or hideous job, just take 5 minutes to get some feedback from them. Or as Laura said, feed forward, right? So what is it that you enjoyed about that session? What can I be doing differently? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? And what you'll find, if you've got 6 people in your team, they'll tell you different things. So once again, as the leader or the coach, you need to be a bit of a chameleon for different people. Different strokes for different folks, as they say. The other thing here, and the last one, is your self-management. So if you set a coaching session for 9 o'clock, make sure that you're ready and online by 5 to 9. Make sure you've got your documents ready. Make sure you've got your feedback on hand. Make sure that you're ready for that session as well. There's nothing worse going into a coaching session. I've been on the end of a few of them where that person doesn't really know where they want to go with that session. It's not a live coaching session where we're asking the other person to set the agenda. This is about, hey, I need to work with you on X, Y, Z. So this is going to be the focus of our session. So these are just 5 kind of things that you need to be aware of when you're coaching virtually. Some of them apply when you're co-located or face-to-face, but a couple of them are just heightened a little bit more when you're talking virtually. So the last thing I'm going to wrap up with today is just giving you this as a quick overview. This is a much deeper dive. I could do probably 5 hours on this easily. So maybe we'll set this up for next week or so. But the GROW model is the one that we choose to teach when we do our 101s. There are lots of different coaching models out there. The GROW model has been around, how old am I now? 43. It's 9 years older than me, so there you go, 52. My maths isn't great. But 1968, this was developed by a guy called Sir John Whitmore and some other people as well, but he's mainly cited for the work. And it gives you 4 stages to your coaching structure. There are lots of models out there. They essentially use the same process. Some people find this a bit clunky, but I find when you're teaching this for the first time, it's great just to give people this structure. The first thing in the part of this, it is an acronym. We're trainers, we love our acronyms, right? It is goal. So what is the purpose for your session? Now here you could be asking yourself, what are the kind of things that I need to work on with this person? So if it's a salesperson, maybe they need help on overcoming objections. So for the next 6 weeks, we're going to work on you overcoming objections. And then what we do is for each session, we have a specific focus. So today, generally, we're going to work on overcoming objections. Today, I specifically want to talk to you about how you listen carefully or how you isolate the objection. So you break down the objection handling process and you do a session on each of it. And over 6 to 8, maybe 10 weeks, you'll see a little uplift on each of those areas, okay? So it's that constant reinforcement. But really what you do at the beginning is you set the reason for the session. Look, if they're an experienced member of the staff, you could sit to them and say, hey, look, what would you like to work on? What can I help you with? And they can then actually start setting that focus themselves. The next thing, what is their current reality, right? So what's happening now? What's working, what isn't? So for example, if you've seen something happen in that conversation you just had, you can say, look, I'd like to give you some, I'd like to work on your ability to engage with a group, okay? So the goal is at the end of this session, you'll walk away with 2 or 3 ideas on how you could become more present in a group. So here you say, okay, good. What's happening now? What do you find is happening? And really what we want to be doing is asking questions. Now we might have a piece of feedback in our back pocket ready to go, but we always ask those people first because they might self-source that feedback anyway. And then they might turn around and say, well, I feel, I don't really speak out in group situations. Oh, great. They've just given you your piece of feedback. Okay, good. Let's write that one down. We'll come to that in a minute. A question at this stage is anytime they give you a statement, when they think they're empty of ideas, the one question I always give coaches to constantly ask, that's great. Anything else? Those are the 2 key words that are going to get people to keep thinking. And when they do this, that's your moment to shut up. You don't need to fill the space. Just and you'd be amazed how many times that they think, no, that's it. And you ask the anything else question, they come up with another idea. Once you've got all of the current situations and the current realities, we're then going to find out, okay, great. What can we be doing differently? What options do you have? So what ways have you got working differently moving forward? And this is the important question there, as you see in the bottom right. Any idea they source. So someone might say, I need to put my hand up in a meeting. Okay, great. What would be the result of that? Always ask them to source the result of any action they're doing. At the end of that session, you'll then have then a number of options that ideally they've come up with and allow them to move forward. And at that stage as a coach, once again, what are we asking? Anything else? Anything else? Anything else? Okay. Keep that question forefront of your mind. Now, when you get to a stage where they've literally got no other ideas and you've sourced the impact or the result of all their ideas, that's when you say, great, out of all the things that you've sourced or that we've come up with today, what 1 or 2 things do you think is going to make the biggest impact with you to move forward? And that takes us into the last piece, which John Whitmore called will, or it's commonly called way forward now. And this is basically saying, how committed are you to making those changes? And the kind of things we need to put in there is the what, the when, the how. And then notice it doesn't say the who, because the who should be the coachee you're working with. As a coach, your job is to provide support and to remove any barriers as possible that you can get out of their way. So they might say to you, well, I really like the way Janine operates in a meeting. Okay, great. So why don't you go and sit with Janine? I can help arrange that if you don't know her. And then, oh, actually, no, I can call her myself. Perfect. All of these actions would then be coaching, written down in a coaching form and move forward. Okay, so what we're looking to do there is really drive commitment on how we are moving our people from their current situation, their current reality, through to their next situation. And really what we're looking to do here is just to provide clarity to people in terms of giving them their own ownership of their own development. If you do this, what you'll actually end up finding as you go through the process of building a coaching culture within your team, people start coming to you just to check in, hey, do you think this is a good idea? They will find much more interesting ways of working than possibly you will. The other thing as well that I've always got out of coaching sessions I've run, I've always walked away from my sessions learning something as well. So it's a very, very useful process to go through. And that pretty much brings us to the end of the session. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do, and it's not working at the moment, is it going to go white? And I'm going to ask Ben maybe to step in and help me again. Is I'd love to just get some feedback from you. Actually, I'm going to come out of this, close my screen down just so I can see your faces for a moment. Like I said, we've gone over a little bit of time. We had a couple of issues with the technology. Just before I wrap up, I see the chat has been like alight pretty much the whole time. So before I go, Ben, is there any questions that have been posed that we need to check in with?
There is, yes. Laura has asked, do you think it's efficient or effective to establish a coaching relationship? So have the first session online like we've done today?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Laura, the other thing as well is at the moment, you've got no other choice, right? So just because we're not working in the office, for me, it's no, and I don't think you do this, but it's no reason or excuse not to be doing this. But yeah, look, some of the best coaches I've ever worked with, I've worked with over the phone or over on Zoom. Best coach I ever had was a guy, he's based in Boston. He's called Eddie Rodriguez. He's just the kind of person I needed. I never even saw his face. We did 2 years of telephone coaching. So yeah, so the rapport and the relationship between you and the coach has to be right. But here's the thing, what I'm talking about here is coaching your team members. So if I'm hiring a coach for myself, whether that's a business or life, whatever it might be, I can try a few coaches and find the one that works with me. But if I've got my manager who's going to be running coaching sessions with me, then I don't really get to make that choice. But a key part of it is absolutely building trust and that feeling of safety within that relationship. You can 100% do that virtually and online. Usually I check in and say, does that answer your question? I've got a nod of the head. Okay, cool. So feel free, we can pick that up later. Ben, any more?
Yeah, Peter has said, how do you deal with an individual not accepting feedback and refusing to develop?
Okay. Okay.
Fire them.
Okay, great. Who asked that question? Was that from Alan? Was that
Peter Francis.
Peter? Oh, Peter, how are you? Okay, so here's the thing. Oh, I've got to be careful how I say this. If this is literally an attitude problem, look, there's three things that we can really work on: attitude, knowledge, and skills. And out of all those three of those, you know that the attitude is the most difficult one to shift. So look, my worst thing, or my thing I would say to that carefully is, if that is an ongoing process across everything you're trying to do, that's the time you manage them out of your business, okay? That's part of your coaching conversation. I just got a thumbs up from Alan there. But we do this carefully. We don't just go and that's right, get out. We have a conversational process with them. Look, one thing we go into when I do a deeper dive in this, we do usually a 2-day program on coaching because it's all about skill practice. But there's 3 levels that we operate at when we're coaching teams. First one is what we call coaching for results, which is your top performers. Coaching for improvements, so kind of your B players. And then the last one I refer to as managing performance problems, which is where we're really getting into performance management, potentially exiting someone from the business. Look, if you've got someone that doesn't want to accept feedback, here's the thing. If you follow those golden rules, is it evidenced? Can you provide objective proof, for want of a better word? Have you got anyone else's opinion, or you've got observation, or ideally numbers if you've got feedback on a sales person, whatever it might be? Have you got any objective evidence that you can apply? Now, here's what usually happens. Most people, when they get feedback, feels like they've been punched in the chest, generally, when they get developmental feedback. However, 24 hours later, most people will come back and say, thank you for that. I get it. I do get it. If you've got, Peter, a problem with an individual where it's a constant ongoing process and they think they are, let's say, God's gift, or they can walk on water, then once again, there is an attitude problem you need to address. Very quickly, what I do, if I'm in a feedback or a coaching session, I'm getting that kind of resistance, I'll just stop the session. And I'll just say, hey, look, Peter, look, I'm getting some resistance from you. I'm literally trying to help you here with some feedback and observation. So tell me, what's blocking you from taking that feedback on? If you do that, it's going to go one or two ways, right? You're going to find out what's bothering them. And really what you're talking about, when someone doesn't want to accept feedback, there's obviously a root cause that we need to get to. Maybe they just don't like you, and that is the reality of it. But when you're working with someone like that, you can't choose, the people you want to be working with all the time. So if someone is not resistant to feedback, the first thing is, what can you do to find out the reasons why? But as I said earlier, if that is a constant ongoing process and you see that over a period of months, that's where you need to having serious performance conversations with that person and potentially X them out of your business. Cool. Maybe one more, Ben, if we've got more.
That's it. Someone asked a similar question about giving feedback to anyone who has the attitude, having attitude or resistance. You've kind of answered that, and there's not been any others. Everyone's just thank you.
Just one thing I will say is there was a kind of a secondary onto that. Whatever you do, give the feedback. Okay, give the feedback. Use those rules. Be consistent. If you go think, I'm not going to bother with John because he doesn't receive my feedback, that's where you then check it out. As long as you know you can walk away from that, God, I did everything I possibly could to help that person move forward, then you can leave there with a clear conscience. So make sure that feedback is being given either way. Great. Awesome. Thank you very much. So lastly, I'm going to do is I'm just going to ping up this one last poll everywhere survey, which is I'd love to get some feedback. This is now the third one we've done. And honestly, you guys tell us what works and what doesn't. So it really does help us move forward. Now, hopefully, if I share this, and I'll ask Ben to just guide me through this if it goes wrong, it's flashing white. I think there's 5 questions that we've asked you in there. I would genuinely love to get your feedback. Ben Carter from my team will just follow up with you. You've got the STAR model feedback in the chat. If you want to download that and keep that, please feel free to use that as a guide. But all I'll say at this stage is thank you very, very much for your time. It's been a lot of fun talking at you, talking at you for an hour. And I look forward to connecting with you either on the next one or actually one day shaking you a hand or giving you a hug, whatever you prefer. But beyond that, I'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.
Just to chip in there, Russell, just to let people know if you are interested in any other training, please do get in touch with us. We do have coaches available if you want to be coached personally as well. So please do get in touch if you want to do that. We do have another webinar on Wednesday for mental health awareness. So just an overview of mental health. So please do keep an eye on our social network channels to be able to sign up for those as well. But other than that, thank you very much, Russell.
Awesome. Ben, I'll actually just say one thing on yours. Those that attended our stress management webinar last week, the next one that Ben's doing is different. It's not stress management, it's mental health. So please think, oh, I did that one last week. They are different webinars. Thank you very much. Look forward to your feedback. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.